Powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Sleuths Unleashed, unraveling criminal cases with your podcast hosts Victoria Kennedy and Susan Gonzalez. In this podcast, we dive deep into the world of crime solving, exploring both the mysteries that baffle and the breakthroughs that inspire. Whether it's cold cases, unsolved disappearances, or the innovative techniques that crack the toughest puzzles, we bring you stories that captivate and challenge the mind. Join us as we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and let's get sleuthing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 5th episode. Tonight is going to be our podcast episode on justice for Jason Abarca. And I am your host, Susan, with my co-host,
Victoria.
And we're going to be discussing a little bit about the case, not going too much into it, but kind of giving you more of an idea about Jason Abarca himself and more of the side of him as a person from his mother's view. And then I'll let Victoria go ahead and introduce that part.
So before we get started, I do want to make a quick correction. On our podcast preview, we had actually mentioned suicide, but I do want to make clarification and say that suicide was never mentioned in Jason's case whatsoever. What was said from Frederick County is that they believe he climbed a tree in order to get a better idea of where he was at while he was in the woods, possibly slipped and fell down the tree, and somehow, some way became stuck. So I definitely want to clarify that, not only on our behalf, but also on the family's behalf as well. So I do apologize for that error. So let's get started. So after talking to Jason's mom, truly hearing her voice and knowing that this is a mom who lost her son. This is a mom who is grieving every single day, day in and day out. So I wanted to be able to learn more about Jason. I did not want us only remembering Jason as a fugitive, because he's not a fugitive. He's a son, he's a brother, he's a grandson, he's a friend. He's your everyday normal person. So being able to talk to the mom and find out more about him just makes him feel like a real person, because that is who he is. He's a real person. He's not a fugitive. So Jason was born on Tuesday, March 9th, 2004. And, there was no problems with the pregnancy. The mom actually had mentioned that she was induced because she was having a lot of water weight. So he was born 2 weeks earlier from his due date. But other than that, everything was fine. Both Jason and his mom left the hospital the following day. And as he continued to grow up in his early childhood, he was very playful. He loved playing with his brothers. They were very much into video games, playing on Xbox and PlayStation. He had 4 older brothers that were always living there with him. And then his older brother would come to visit all the time. Again, he was all about having fun with his siblings, playing Xbox and PlayStation. His mom also continues on to say that he was a very sweet boy. He was a sweet kid. He played video games a lot. He was good in school. He didn't particularly like school. So later on, that is when they felt that maybe he needs to be put on some type of medication. Maybe, that's why he has ADD or ADHD. So that's when he was prescribed Ritalin. Now, there were struggles there because Ritalin apparently makes you lose your appetite. So he didn't want to be this skinny kid. He wanted to be, a big kid where basically he's, he has muscles, he looks strong. So that became a struggle with him to have him to continue on taking that medication. But when he did take it, the mom had mentioned that he would actually, he was more focused, basically. So again, Jason was your normal everyday kid, your everyday person, your everyday son, your everyday sibling. And, he was a very sweet kid, just like his mom said. The neighbors felt that he was sweet as well. And this is a kid who loved sports. He loved football. Apparently, he followed in his brother's footsteps. He was the youngest. He would always call his mom Mama. None of his other siblings called her that, so she's not really sure where that came from. But during the course of the conversation, that was one of the things that the mom had mentioned, that she misses hearing that. She misses him calling her, or Jason sending her text messages. She says that is the one thing that she truly misses. I mean, don't get me wrong, and don't be fooled. The mom misses her son, but there's little things that all of our kids do that always puts a smile on our face, no matter how much it irritates us at times. So those are just some of the small things that she's missing. So the thing with Jason is that I really want to emphasize the fact is that he's not a fugitive. This is somebody's son. This is somebody's brother. This is somebody's friend. This is somebody's grandson. So there's a lot of things that it's important that we take into consideration. Unfortunately, the police department, their whole thing was that, oh, we had this fugitive. And that is how they are labeling him, as a fugitive. Now, Jason, as I mentioned, he's a regular person just like you and I. And we felt that it was important to bring that to the forefront. So that way we can humanize him and people can see another side of Jason that's never been told, that's never been shared, and things that nobody has ever asked about.
So, yeah, even though the police department, had him out there as a fugitive and he had done some things that kind of led up to those actions being taken because of his behavior that specific day, that didn't mean that Jason was a bad person. He still had family. He still had brothers. He still had sisters. He still had people that loved him. And no matter what, even though he did some things that didn't necessarily hurt anybody and really harm somebody, he made some bad choices, but he's still human. And I feel like we all need to know about him as a person and the type of person he was. And that sometimes when we reach that breaking point in our life where there's so much stuff that's gone on and there's so much on our mind and mentally we're just exhausted, that sometimes we make choices that aren't always the best and it can get us into some trouble. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go out and like really take on something or hurt somebody badly or hurt ourselves. We just may do some things just to kind of get our mind going in a different direction or trying to get our mind to calm down, especially when we're in that state of mind. And maybe, that Adderall played a little bit of point, which we'll talk about here in a little while. And he had taken a little bit extra of that. So it kind of made him a little bit paranoid. And so your actions are not really taken. But at the same time, everybody knew he was in a mental fragile state. And that was known to the police over and over and over again in this. So that's kind of why we want to humanize him and let everybody know what's going on with him, as he had a life and his life just went great. And then he had things happen that just took him down a different path for a while. And we all have that happen. So I think it's good that we're going to learn about him and understand who he was as a person before we go into the case file itself.
I really want to say thank you to the parents.
Yes.
Yesterday I had a conversation with them, and being a mom myself and hearing the heartbreak and the anger and the frustration in the mom's voice, it was not easy. I pretend to be this badass, but when it comes to kids, regardless if they are literally an infant or an adult, that is still somebody's child. It breaks me. And it took everything I had not to get upset. Everything I had. But, the
Especially when you have a mother reaching out for help. Like, she literally was reaching out to the police to help her. It wasn't that, he had done these things and she was trying to hide him or anything like that. She literally knew he needed help. She knew uh, the mental issues that he was having at the moment, and she knew he needed somebody to find him and help him out.
well, she even was talking about that. She even when she was even talking about that. And she was saying, when you take so much of that medicine, I can't talk again. Okay, back up. She had made mention about contacting the police department by text, and they would not respond back. And not only that, but I guess apparently that medication that Jason was taking, if you take an abundance amount of that medicine, it's literally like if you have meth in your system. So, of course, he's going to be maybe hallucinating. Maybe he's going to be just out of it completely. He's going to feel somebody's watching him, somebody's chasing him. And who's to
Well, and they
say
were.
that? Yes, yeah. And who's to say that aside from the person coming out of McDonald's trying to chase him down, who's to say that there was not another person truly chasing him?
Or people. I mean, you could have had quite a bit of people out there because you had that announcement all over, and it's a small town, and small town people tend to listen to everything, and then they start getting involved in everything. So you have so many people trying to corner a kid that's already paranoid, and you don't let the cops just handle the situation on their own, then you got so many people involved and so much distraction.
It's very true. And again, this whole situation could have had a much different outcome if the police department was just listening to the mom.
Yeah, and like I said, with speaking with the mom, it was nice to know that, he was into his family life. He was into his siblings. He loved, looking up to his brothers. He had a younger sister. The younger sister, she said they played football together. Jason would get out in the yard and teach her how to play because he wanted her to be able to stick up for herself and play out there with them. And he was just full of life, He wanted everybody to be part of the family, and he just loved being part of the family. But when he got to high school, he did have a couple issues with bullying because he wasn't the same size as his brothers. He was smaller, and he wanted to play the sports, but he just didn't have the same build as everybody else. So that was a little downfall for him, but he still played. He still played football. He still wrestled. I think she even mentioned that he won the wrestling competition, the Montgomery County Whole Championship, where all the high schools get together, and he won the first year of wrestling. He beat the lead kid for wrestling in his 9th grade year. So he was very good at things that he tried to do, even though, kids would give him a hard time about it. He was still go out there and do his thing and still participate. So he didn't fully give up on anything. He just, had a bad turn of events later on in life and made a few choices that weren't great. But that doesn't mean that he was a criminal and that he should have been hunted like an animal either. So, but I did want to say, like she talked about him playing sports and stuff. And she said that, he was the only kid that used to call her mama, and he was a big mama's boy. And so we kind of wanted to play a little track from the mom, just kind of explaining that a little bit, just to give you a little insight to how the mom felt about him and hear her voice and hear how she explained to Jason a little bit.
Like I said, he really loved sports. He loved football. He followed in his brother's footsteps. He was my youngest son. He used to always call me mama, and none of my other children called me that. So it was like, I don't know why he wanted to call me mama, but he always did. And I guess I could say he was probably like a mama's boy. But he always talked to me a lot, texted me a lot. Later on, when he played football, while he was in middle school. He also liked to play basketball. We had a park that was near our house, so my older sons used to play basketball there. And, when they went on to college or, moved out and went to the military, he would still go down there and play basketball.
He was full of life. This kid was not one that was set out to go and do anything intentionally to harm people. I just believe that, he took a little extra of his Adderall that day, and it made him paranoid, and he made some bad choices along the way after he originally wrecked his car, his rental car, and then he decided to make some bad choices after that, because originally he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just driving his own car in an area where still to this day I don't believe any of us know why he was an hour away from home in a direction that nobody thinks that he has any friends or anybody that he knew. So we're kind of in awe of what he was doing out in that area. But to wreck his car, and then it's like he almost panicked, and then tried to find a way to get another car, and that's when this whole situation took a different turn. Well, and let's not forget that before all this whole incident happened too, she had another son that was in the Army. And 6 months prior to that, in May of 2023, he committed suicide after being bullied in the military by some other people in his Army area. And there was really nothing that took place from that. They just know that he was bullied pretty bad, and he was hurting so bad that he took his own life. And that depressed Jason as well, because he looked up to him. And that's where I think all of this started with the kid, to understand that this was like a pattern that didn't just start that day. It was something that there was things that led up to him and having depression and feeling like life's lost a little bit because of losing a brother to that, and not understanding why you would take your own life, why you would leave everybody behind that you loved, and trying to grasp that. So Jason was kind of trying to handle that as well too. So that's another thing to remember when we go into what led up to all the things that happened on the day that this happened to Jason. Yeah, and the day that this all happened, the mom and the stepdad were coming back from the Dominican Republic that day. They were headed on their way home. They had let Jason know, hey, we're on our way home. We're either going to cook something for dinner, or we're going to order something out. And he pretty much had said, okay. And so they didn't think anything different of it. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He didn't say anything unusual. And then all of a sudden, he was gone. He wasn't at their house anymore. He left his phone behind. He didn't take that with him. He was just in the car and drove. And he drove to Winchester, Virginia. And that's where these incidents started taking place, is when he got to this area. Like I said before, he wrecked his rental car that he was driving because his car was in the shop from a previous wreck that he had had. So it was getting fixed. And when he wrecked his car, he had taken 2 kitchen knives with him. So I'm not quite sure about why that was with him, just in case he needed to protect himself or something. I want to find out if there's anything that lured him to that area. I know we probably will never know, because that's just something that is probably with him, and that's all. But after he wrecked that car, he tried to take off with another car, and that person wouldn't let him in. But he did get a hold of another individual's car and got her out of the car. She had a little nick on her finger. It didn't look like it was bleeding too much or anything, but there was just a little nick. It could have been anything from just trying to hurry up and get out of the car to the different things that happened in the process of that. And he took off with her car, and that's where the cops started looking for him after he took off with that car. And that's where they started saying that he became a fugitive on the run. So this is where we have people calling in saying they see him driving. And in closing for this week's episode, we're going to let you hear a sample from the mom.
So Jason was very depressed because I had an older son that was in the Army. He was a captain in the Army, and he took his own life. And that was in May of 2023. So my husband and I went in December for anniversary, and we went to the Dominican Republic, and we went for 4 days. We left on a Saturday morning. Jason and Karina were here. Jason was 19. My daughter was 18 at the time. And I told Jason, like, don't worry, you can call me, text me. We'll be back on Wednesday. Jason needed to go to work. He had his own car. He was working at, like I said, the warehouse. So we left on Saturday morning. I hugged Jason. I told him, don't worry, you can text me, call me. I gave him a hug. He said, okay, Mama, I love you. And I said, I love you too. And I hugged him goodbye. And then we went to the Dominican Republic. And while we were there, I texted back and forth with Jason and Karina, my daughter. So Wednesday, we were coming back, and I got a phone call, and I didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. But then they also called my husband's phone. And I said, well, that must be someone, we need to talk to. So I called the number back, and it was a detective from Winchester. And he asked me, if I'm Jennifer Soto. And I said, yes. And he said, well, do you have a rental car? And do you know who's Jason Abarca? And I said, yes, that's my son. And then I got panicky, and I said, what happened? And he said, well, your son was involved in the accident in the rental car. Then he proceeded to, this is allegedly, so he says that he proceeded to go to a McDonald's in Winchester, Virginia, and by a kitchen knife, scaring some lady out of her car, he took a Toyota Camry in a McDonald's parking lot, and then took the car, and then he crashed it. And that's all basically the detective would say, and that they're looking for him. And so he said that they found Jason's wallet in the rental car and an empty bottle of Adderall. And so then I started crying, and I said, if you found an empty bottle of Adderall, that means he took a bunch of Adderall and he's out of his mind. He's not in the right state of mind. Please find him. I don't know what he's done, but please, please find him. He doesn't know anybody in Virginia. He doesn't know where he is. So please find him. And I said, where is he at? Where did he wreck this car at? And then the detective said, well, I can't tell you that because he's a wanted fugitive right now. So I can't tell you any information about it. So that's how he left me on the phone, was that they would be in touch with me, but that they couldn't tell me anything. So, like I said, I have many sons, and Jason was my youngest son. And Jason, anytime if he ever was in trouble or if he was worried or anything was happening, he would call me. And he didn't call me. And I knew something was happening. So I kept texting this detective or calling, and he wouldn't answer me. And I said, please, please tell me, can you guys please search, because it's dark now. You're saying he's in Virginia, and it's 22 degrees in December. It was December 13th on a Wednesday. And he called me at 5:45 and never would answer my calls or texts after that. So I didn't really sleep Wednesday night. Thursday morning, we woke up early, and I called Hagerstown, Maryland Police Department because I wanted to report him missing. They came to my house but told me that they couldn't report him missing because he was a wanted fugitive in Virginia. So then I kept trying to call different places in Virginia, the Winchester Police Department, the detective that had called me. He wouldn't answer my texts or calls. So then Friday morning, then we went and drove out to try to, we actually found out that he was in different counties. So he went to Winchester, which is in Frederick County, Virginia, but he also drove through Shenandoah County, and then back into Star Tannery, Virginia, which is also Frederick County, Virginia. And so pieces by pieces, I called the Shenandoah, I called different counties to find out more information, and they kind of gave me an address, but not really. And so then I said to my husband, like, we just need to go to the Winchester Police Department because no one's answering my phone calls, no one's answering nothing. So we went there, and it was probably around 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, December 15th. And I didn't know, but it doesn't matter, that I asked to speak to someone in the case, and it was Detective Nine in Winchester, Virginia. He took me and my husband back.
Sorry, I
And
apologize.
it's okay. We have dogs too. So he took us back, and then he recorded my husband and I in the room. And I don't know if that's legal, but he didn't tell us they were videotaping and recording us. But I guess it's the police. So I told him that, please, can you guys go look for him? Like, I feel like either he might have froze to death or something has happened to him. Maybe someone did something to him, because Jason did not know where he was at all. And you guys said you found an empty Adderall pill bottle. So if he took a bunch of Adderall, like, he's out of his mind, delusional, paranoid, And this detective told me that they don't have the resources, that they, they could try to talk to the marshals, but they don't have the resources to go find Jason. And he also wouldn't even hear me talk. He first wanted to tell me how your son did very terrible things. He's a criminal. He did very terrible things. And I told him, I was almost in tears, and I said, I understand, but my son was not in the right state of mind. He would not have done that if he had not taken the Adderall. I'm not making excuses, and I feel terrible for anybody he may have scared or damaged property or anything, but he's not in the right state of mind. My normal son isn't taking a bunch of Adderall, wouldn't have done that. And he didn't care. He didn't care. He just wanted to say that Jason was terrible and that, he's a fugitive. We need to get this done. And I said, I understand that he did things, but that's not my normal son. Like, please, can you find him? I just want my son alive. You can put him in jail. You can put him in a mental hospital, whatever you want to do. And then if you put him in jail, then maybe when he gets out, he can pay restitution to the people for property damage or anything, But at least he'd still be alive. And this guy just kept saying, like, well, we don't have any resources to search for him. So day after day went on, and I'm pretty much going crazy. And my family and I decided we would just go to the private property, because we actually found the address where the car was wrecked. And we said, well, let's just go there. Let's just go look and try to find him. So we went on that Tuesday to try to search for him. And it was very cold. And the woods are thick. When you go down the road that my son went down, it says, smile, you're on camera, like private property, no trespassing, everywhere. It says that. And, I didn't care at that point because the police were not doing nothing. So I'm just desperate. Like, I just want to find my son, if he's dead, I just want to find him so I can say goodbye. And we walked a bunch of places. Oh, my husband tried to climb the hills, like the mountains that had like thorns. There was thorn bushes everywhere. We all got scratched. It was my husband and I, my daughter, her cousin, and her cousin's fiance, and we just tried to search everywhere, and we couldn't find anything. So, it was later that week. Supposedly this farmer that lives right there reached out to my husband on Facebook. His son or something reached out to my husband on Facebook trying to ask that they wanted to help us search for Jason, that they felt bad or whatever. They saw the article because the day we went to search was on a Tuesday. So we went to Winchester and tried to go to some newspaper there in Winchester to say, hey, please, can you help us find, my son? He's missing. Yes, okay, he's a fugitive, but can we find him, please? Because the police weren't looking. So nothing really happened. The first time the police actually looked for my son was on January 3rd. So that was from December 13th to January 3rd. That's like 20 days. And they didn't do a full search. They did like a 25% radius search. And it wasn't from exactly where the car was crashed. They went farther to the left. So if they would have done the perfect 25% radius search, then they would have probably found my son in the tree, if that's where he was at that time.
After hearing from the mom, you can tell in her voice how she was worried about her son. And then next week, we're going to get more into the case and what happened after they started trying to find him after he took off in the car. And if you guys have any information or any questions, you can always email us at sleuthsunleashed@gmail.com. Or we did start a website that you guys can all check out. It's called Justice for Jason. It's justice, the number 4, jasonabarca.com. And you can check that out. And it's got some pictures on there of Jason. It's got some more information, link to the podcast, a link to the YouTube channel. And you can check all of that out. And then next week, we'll hit more on the case itself. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on Sleuths Unleashed, Unraveling Criminal Cases. We hope today's episode sparked your curiosity and gave you a fresh perspective on the art of crime solving. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with fellow sleuths. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and until next time, keep unraveling the mysteries of the world.